Okay, Steve, I didn't get minutes, or Sharman, I didn't get minutes for the meeting.
You mean
I mean, the agenda thing for me to do.
because we're not going to closed session. I'm here to get that information.
Okay, so I don't have to
It's
do
only
it?
when you're in closed session and I'm not present. I don't know times and things that go on. So
Okay, all right, perfect, thank
we're all
you.
good.
Okay. All right, welcome to the school board meeting for the Castaic Union School District. Today is July 29th, 2021. We are going to call our meeting to order at 5:04 p.m. And we will now do a roll call. Ms. Maxon?
Here.
Mr. Malcolm?
Here.
And Mr. Richard is absent. He's on his way though. Ms. Pearson?
Here.
And then I'm here. So we will now have the Pledge of Allegiance by Mr. Malcolm.
And if everybody could please stand and place your right hand over your heart. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Mr. Malcolm.
Ma'am?
I feel like I'm in the military, Fred. All right. Can I get a motion to approve the agenda?
I'll move.
Okay, motion by Ms. Pearson,
No, I'll second it.
second by Mr. Malcolm. We will now vote to approve the agenda. Ms. Maxon,
Aye.
Mr. Malcolm,
Aye.
Mr. Richard,
Aye.
Ms. Pearson,
Aye.
and an aye by myself. The motion is approved. We will now go into the hearing session portion of the meeting, and I'm just going to read a statement. State law prevents the board from acting on any matter not listed on the agenda or from discussing any such matter in any detail. The board will take any comments received under advisement for possible future discussion and or action. And I also want to note that we spend, is it 3 minutes per speaker and 20 minutes per topic.
Correct.
And we do adhere to that. So if letter takes longer than 3 minutes to read, we do stop and then we move on to the next one. So I will let Ms. Ortega read those.
Okay, good afternoon. We did receive 9 letters from the community. And all of those letters have been provided to the board for your review prior to the meeting beginning. We have 8 letters that are in opposition to mask wearing in the fall. And we have 1 letter in support of mask wearing in the fall. So I'll begin here. The first letter comes to us from parent Rebecca Buksinski, and it reads, to the Castaic Union School District, I would like to voice my concerns about having the students masked and socially distanced for the upcoming school year. It deeply burdens me that we are asking our children to make significant sacrifices to their day-to-day life in order to protect others. It is the job of adults to protect their children and not the other way around. We should not ask our children to cover their faces, restrict their breathing, impede their ability to socially connect with others in order to try to prevent the spread of a virus that has been highly politicized, has a 99.97% survival rate, even for the unvaccinated, and for which we have an effective vaccine widely available. Any adult who would like to protect themselves from the risk of a COVID-19 infection can freely receive the vaccine, but our children should not be asked to continue to bear this burden. There is always a risk-reward assessment in any decision we make. I believe the risk we are taking to our children's mental health and academic progression is greater than the risk we are taking in regards to community spread of COVID-19. Please hear what the parents of this district are saying. We have sacrificed enough. It is time to stand up and do what is best for our children and their futures. I hope we as adults can be an example of sacrificial, mature love toward our community by lying down these anti-science restrictions. The school board has the freedom to make these decisions, and we will back you 100%. Thank you. I know you have a heavy burden to bear in leading this district, and I want you to know that your community will support you. Okay, the second letter comes to us from a student, Harlow Tidball. Hi, my name is Harlow Tidball, and I'm a student from Castaic Elementary. I'm writing to you all because I think kids should have the option to wear a mask or not. I have been at home learning virtually for a year in 3rd grade, and I have been looking forward to being back at school. I know we're going back, but it would be good for us if we had the option to wear a mask or not. When we wear a mask, it can make us have a hard time breathing. It also irritates our face. I don't understand why kids who are healthy and aren't sick have to wear a mask 6 hours a day. And if we are sick, we would stay at home. It would be good to go back and see my teachers and friends' smiling faces. This is one thing that I've been looking forward to for over a year. We've been through enough this year, and deserve to have a normal school year. I really hope you can take my comments into consideration and make masks optional for kids at school. Thank you. The next letter comes from Starlet Pacone. Dear Superintendent and Board of Trustees, like many other parents, I watched the Zoom from the Newhall Unified School District meeting during the portion about masks in school. I was impressed with how it was discussed and handled. In the spring, we were so proud of our CUSD for leading the charge and returning to school full-time and handling it so efficiently. Thank you for all the steps taken to get there. You all knew that it was the right thing to do for the students. I can't tell you the difference it made for their education and their mental health, most importantly. I respectfully ask you to review what Newhall has drafted and consider for immediate use at our Castaic school. Stand boldly again for our kids regarding their choice to wear a mask. We are all advocates for the kids. When are we going to collectively say enough is enough? Everyone knows that the handed down recommendations and mandates from the powers that be, but common sense and choice has to factor in at some point. You don't have to go much further than the printing on the mask box that reads will not provide any protection against COVID-19. Further, a doctor described the mask's ability to block the virus the same way a chain link fence would block a fistful of sand thrown at it. Our children were not meant to walk around wearing a piece of material that harvests bacteria and allows viruses to easily pass through to their faces anyway. The major source of frustration lies in the fact that my daughter wears glasses, and I don't need to tell you how horrible this has been for her. Not only is breathing restricted, but when she does, she fogs up her lenses. These children have to constantly pull their mask down below their nose to be able to see and breathe. Imagine doing that on top of navigating through a lesson that might be difficult while you can't even see your teacher's mouth moving. It's so wrong. You need to raise your hand to step outside for a breathing break. Please read all of that again and tell me with a straight face that it's normal. It's not. Please hear me. Parents need you to help us advocate for our kids, our community kids. This has nothing to do with making parents happy and everything to do with what is right, letting students choose to mask or not. I respectfully implore that you all to submit a resolution similar to Newhall's template that our children would simply have the choice through exemption. Please stand boldly with our kids. Most sincerely, Starlet Pacone. The next letter comes from student Susie Richard. Dear school board, first I want to say thank you for all that you do. I was happy to go back to school last year because Zoom was harder to understand and wasn't as fun. When I went back to school, I didn't realize we had to wear masks. It was very hard to wear them all day. Also, sometimes it was hard to understand my teacher too because I couldn't hear him. Like one time he called my reading group and I couldn't hear him and everyone in my reading group was waiting for me, so I got embarrassed. The hardest part was I felt like I couldn't breathe at times during the K-Day, especially when it was hot out. During recess and PE, I felt really hot and tired and felt like I was about to faint. I really hope we don't have to wear masks in school again because the mask can make you really sick and tired. Last year in 4th grade, I had to run a lap almost around the whole school with a mask. I almost passed out. I can't deal with it again. I don't think I want to come back to school with a mask. I know I could go on Zoom, but I will miss all the fun activities in real school. I don't want to watch everyone have fun while I'm not. You know how I said that masks make you sick? Well, it's from the bacteria in your mask. If you can read the article link, it shows what the labs found in these kids' masks. She's provided a link to a website for you. You'll see that in the letter. She finishes with, I hope that you would agree to not wear a mask at school anymore. Thank you again for all that you do and for reading this letter. Sincerely, Susie Richard. Okay, our next letter comes from a parent, Luke Orr. Good evening, all. Please join in the fight to unmask our children. We understand that you are bound by certain rules. However, this does not impede your ability to speak up and question the non-scientific and unsupported basis of these mandates. How do you plan to enforce mask mandates? What is the process for mask removal and replacement after recess and lunch? What are your specific plans to address learning loss aside from extending 1 year a week by 1 hour? Will you be allowing all children to access the Learning Center regardless of IEP 504 status? What programs and systems are you using to address the potential learning curve facing us this school year? Please help us come together as a community for our children. We know that different parents may have different views, but we all want our children to be happy, healthy, and successful. Our next letter comes from a parent, Samantha Westig. Dear Castaic Union School District Superintendent and members, board members. First, I will share my disappointment in you, our board and superintendent. It is unfortunate that you continue to sit back doing nothing to support school choice and COVID mitigation. You tell us you don't like the mask mandates as well. You keep telling parents to write our representatives. You have chosen to remain silent, and that is more than disappointing. It is unacceptable. School districts, board members, superintendents, and teachers all across the state have been standing up with their communities. You have not. You know you have the ability to reach policymakers in ways that we do not. At the last board meeting, you mentioned twice your correspondence and dealings with local lawmakers in other regards. So do not sit here any longer and tell us that you cannot do anything. You are choosing not to do anything in regards to mask mandates. I fear that in future matters, you will only continue to do nothing. Hopefully in the future, we can have newly elected board members who will stand up for what they and their community members stand for. Second, since it is inevitable that masks will be mandatory this school year, I have the following questions for you. One of your guiding principles for the 21-22 school academic year is to protect the health and safety of students, parents, caregivers, educators, and community, With the upcoming school year only weeks away, district families are missing vital information in regard to student health, safety, and sanitation. You have let us know that masks will be required to be worn while indoors on campus. Students may remove these masks during lunch, PE, recess outdoors, and outdoor breaks. What is your plan to ensure that their masks will remain sanitary during the times they are off their faces? Will students be provided with clean disposable masks every time they take them off and on? What about the children that wear their own reusable cloth masks? What will you do to stop the contamination of bacteria and viruses that may adhere to these masks throughout the day from being put back on their faces? They will be putting these masks on and off at least 3 times a day, if not more. Where will these masks be put to stay sanitary? How will you protect the health and safety of our students in these regards? I'm sorry. Also, how do you plan to address students who will not put a mask on at any time throughout the day? Who specifically will be in charge of mask enforcement? Will you please address this issue promptly with district families? Thank you, Samantha Westing. Our next letter comes from parent Allison Bozigian, I believe it is. I apologize if that's wrong. Dear members of Castaic Union School District, I am writing again on behalf of myself and my daughter who attends Castaic Elementary School. In regard to the agenda item number 7 at tonight's meeting, I ask the Castaic Union School District follow scientific data and advocate for our children in regard to the mask mandate by CDPH for all schools. The Newhall School District recently sent a request for resolution to CDPH following their school district meeting, and I'm asking that CUSD follow suit and send a similar resolution. The masking of our children should be at the discretion of our district and their parents. Mandating masks for our young elementary age children makes learning more difficult. Creates social anxiety. Was that time? No, okay.
You have an echo.
I apologize. I'm hearing some feedback. Mandating masks of our young elementary age children makes learning more difficult, creates social anxiety, and affects their mental health. I have seen firsthand how this pandemic has affected children and adolescents in regard to mental health. There are far more suicide attempts and drug usage than ever before. Aligning with Newhall School District keeps us aligned with other schools in our Santa Cruz Valley. I believe we are in a good position being a smaller district with so much support from our parents to do what is best for our children. There is significant evidence that children do not need to wear masks. They are at a lower risk of being infected by COVID-19 and transmitting the virus to others. You can view the CDC website to see the low rate of child deaths with COVID-19. Likewise, you can easily find the requirements requirements of data supporting that the schools last year did not implement mask requirements show no change in infection rates compared to those that did. This was also during peak COVID-19 infections during the November through February spikes. As of now, the rate of transmission of COVID-19 is increasing, but these numbers are still primarily in adults, not elementary school age children. It is time to do the right thing for our kids. Thank you for your time and consideration in this matter. Allison Bazugian. Our next letter comes from Katie Tidball. She is also a parent. I'm writing to you as a concerned parent of 3 young children ages 7, 8, 9 who attend Castaic Elementary School. They did virtual learning last school year, and although they survived, it was not easy for them to learn via Zoom meetings. They yearned to see their teachers and classmates as well as being in a normal school environment. Now the children are allowed to return to school full time. Masks are a major issue. They are struggling with the fact that they have to wear a mask for 6 hours a day in order to see their teachers and friends in person. My children in particular have not worn a mask in well over a year. We have been to numerous stores and restaurants with no issues. They have also contracted the COVID virus this whole time. We already practice good hygiene and hand washing in our home, and a mask is unnecessary for them. Masking our children for this coming school year is not backed by science, nor is it medically necessary. The transmission rate of COVID between children or children to adults is next to nothing. Having these children not been through enough, haven't these children not been through enough over the course of a year and a half? They've been denied school functions, hugs from their teachers, playtime with their friends, and most importantly, being in a normal classroom setting where they can learn and grow. We need to be the voices for our children, and masking them should not be mandatory. Masks prevent children from having proper airflow as well as they are breathing in their own carbon monoxide. They cause irritation on their faces as well as behind their ears. They create a disconnect between fellow students and teachers. How are they supposed to see smiling faces, let alone how to enunciate their words? The mental toll this pandemic has taken on these children cannot be forgotten. So now is the time to stand up for our children and fight back. Make masks optional. Why should they have to wear a mask for 6 hours a day if they're healthy and are not an issue in transmitting the virus to others? It doesn't make sense and it is wrong. I urge you all to stand up for our children and do the right thing. They deserve more. Make masks optional for our children so that they can return to school in a normal classroom setting and thrive. Thank you, Katie Tidball. Okay, and this last letter is the one that is in support of mask wearing from Lisa Lopez Suarez, also a parent. Dear board members, I want to express my support and gratitude that the board is following CDC recommendations and county mandates at this time. While Saugus may be searching ways to circumvent what our local health officials are telling us, I plead with CUSD not to follow CUSD's lead. This is a medical issue and should not be treated as a political one. Doctors and other medical professionals don masks all day long and suffer no real consequences. Our community should do the same until such a time as it is safe not to do so. It is so important for children to learn the spirit of community and respect and care for the well-being of those around them. I do not want my children possibly exposed as long-term effects in children, even asymptomatic ones who have the virus, are concerning based on some new research. Thank you for all you do, Lisa Suarez. That's the last letter.
Thank you, Ms. Ortega. That's not easy to read all that, so I appreciate you. That was amazing. Okay, we will now move on to the action items. And the first item is the number 1 is first reading to delete old board policy 6157, distance learning. Is there a motion to approve this item?
I'll
I'll
move.
move. I'll second.
Okay, motion by Mr. Malcolm, second by Mr. Richard. Are there any questions, comments, or is there a present? Oh, I know. Ms. LePage, did you want to talk about these, or do we do that in another one when we're actually talking about independent study? Let's do that.
Yeah, let's take the vote on this one because this is deleting all of the distance learning we used last year that's no longer applicable.
Okay, perfect. Sorry. All right. Are there any questions or comments by board members? Okay, seeing that there are none, we will now vote. Ms. Maxon?
Aye.
Mr. Malcolm?
Aye.
Mr. Richard?
Aye.
Ms. Pearson?
Aye.
And an aye by myself. Motion passes. Item number 2, first reading to delete old board policy and adopt new board policy 6158, independent study. Is there a motion to approve this item?
I'll move.
Motion by Ms. Pearson,
I'll second.
second by Mr. Richard. And I'll let Ms. LePage talk to us a little bit about what this is.
Hi, everybody. So independent study, the way that we are implementing it this year has some similarities to last year, but it is not called distance learning. It's independent studies. Do you want me, Steve, to give all the specifics that I have?
Maybe just an overview of what, how the old independent study program was versus what now the new requirements are. And part of the reason we're here is we have to adopt this newly revised board policy and administrative regulation before the first day of school. And since our next board meeting was August 12th, after school started, we wanted to get this adopted. But yeah, go ahead, Kim, I'll let you give a brief overview.
Okay, so briefly, independent study is open to all students who would like to enroll, specifically students whose health would be put at risk by being in person. And then that can be determined by the parent. A doctor's note is not required in order to enroll. The way it differs from previous years to now is we are offering online synchronous instruction So there are requirements, grade level requirements. Students in grades K through 3 are required to have daily synchronous instruction. And students in grades 4 through 8 are required to have at least once weekly synchronous instruction and daily live interaction. And all of the specific information as far as what synchronous and daily live interaction, what those terms mean, those are posted on our website, as well as all of the specific information pertaining to independent studies. So moving into the school year, we have all of our students who are enrolling in independent studies will be housed, all of our K through 6 students will be housed at Castaic Elementary School. So we ask parents to go ahead on our website and you can enroll there, and you can do an intra-district transfer to enroll your student if their home school is Northlake or Live Oak. Students who are in grades 7 and 8 will be housed at Castaic Middle School. The instruction, the teachers, any classified staff, support staff, etc., will be housed at Castaic Elementary as well. And so when I said earlier, it's open to all students, I've had a lot of parents ask about students who have special needs or have IEPs. Students in that case will have an IEP meeting to determine if this is the best setting for them to be successful in school. Let's see. All students who enroll in independent study will be required to have a written learning agreement. And I'll walk all families through every step of the way because things are changing. We're getting little bits and pieces of information each day. So written learning agreement will be agreed upon between the student, the parent, as well as the teacher. So we will have to include specifics related to when instruction will take place, synchronous instruction will take place, what's expected for asynchronous learning, what's expected for daily live interaction, and how work will be submitted. Attendance will also be a big factor this year as well. Students will be expected to participate in whatever's expected from their assigned teacher. So attendance, daily attendance will be mandatory. Obviously, there are things that happen, but when we have students who have difficulty with attending, if they're attending more than 3, or if they're not attending 3 or more school days in any given school week, then we're required to have a re-engagement plan. So I'm working on the re-engagement plan right now. That's one thing that the parents and the student will also agree to prior to starting independent studies. So attendance will be big, and lots of parent support. So I think that that's the biggest question I'm getting from parents is what type of support will I have to provide my child? And it will be definitely a good amount, you know, just like in-person learning when the students come home with homework, etc. At-home learning requires a lot of support as well. Device and connectivity support. Again, last year we provided Chromebooks, just like you would be in person. Whatever we supply to parents or to students in person, we supply that with independent studies as well. So we'll do our best to support parents with that. Overall, you know, and parents are also have the right to request a conference and we will hold that conference within the first 30 days after the first day of instruction, if parents do request it. And in that case, parents usually will just want further, more specific information as far as what is my day-to-day schedule or my child's day-to-day schedule going to look like. So that's something that we have printed as well on our website. Duration of enrollment. No child is required to stay in independent studies once they enroll. If parents or if students begin independent studies and it's just not working out for them and they want to return to in-person learning, then we as a district have 5 instructional days to return that student to a classroom. It might not be their home school, but wherever we will definitely have room. We'll return the student to their grade level at whatever school is open for that. If students begin the school year in person and they want to enroll in independent studies, then we will have a process for that as well. I encourage families just to be as consistent as possible, not to pop in and out of independent studies, just for consistency purposes for the learning of their child. I think that pretty much covers like the overall basis. One of the biggest questions that I'm getting is what is the time requirement each day? And I've gotten conflicting answers just through several meetings that I've been to. And right before this, I was on a meeting with CDE, and they clarified that there are not the time requirements that we had in the past with our old independent studies, and then also with distance learning, the 180, 230, 240. Per my meeting that I attended today, those are not requirements. The requirements are the synchronous learning for K through 3, daily synchronous learning for K through 3, and then 4 through 8, the weekly synchronous learning and the daily live interaction. So those are the requirements. But obviously, you know, as we do with Castaic Union School District, we do whatever is best for our students, and we'll provide them with what's best for them at their grade level. And as we roll this out, the teachers will be in contact with the parents and the students to let them know what each day might look like per each grade level. So I hope that helps to clarify or give you kind of an overall picture.
I have a question, and I hope it's not a lame question, but
no question is a bad question.
Synchronous learning and live interaction.
That's a really great question. So synchronous learning automatically lends itself to daily live interaction. So K through 3 has it can be face-to-face, it can be a phone call, it can be online to online, it could be person to person. That's what synchronous learning would be.
Okay.
Daily live interaction is school connectedness. So think of it that way. So I'm feeling connected to my school through either connecting with my teacher on Zoom, or I'm feeling connected to my school through connecting with my teacher through Google Classroom, or peer-to-peer interaction. We're working on a group project and it's online and I have peer-to-peer interaction. School connectedness could be I made contact with my my classroom aide who might be helping me. I might be a second language learner and I'm spending my 30 minutes of EL development. That is considered, anything that's considered school connectedness. I'm making a connection to somebody in my classroom or at my school on a daily basis, and it's meaningful. And that's one thing that I want to stress is I would like to see, meaning behind that connectedness and not just a blanket phone call. But that would be the minimum. So there's daily minimum requirements, and then there's what's best for kids. So we want to do what's best for our kids.
Okay, thank you. Are there any questions, other questions from board members?
Kim, can you just confirm with us again and say a little bit more about the one thing that and I'm sure that you're doing this when you go over each individual contract or each individual student, is to make sure that the parent understands that there's way more parent involvement in this. So if somebody really, really struggled last year where the teachers were doing all of the assignments and assigning the work and all that kind of stuff, that this might not be something for those parents if they really struggled with that, because it's going to take more involvement from the parents.
Yeah, when I'm making contact with the families, and that's part of the parent educator student meeting, which can be done in person, it can be done just through phone call. So I'm trying to set up a plan to connect with each family personally and really explain like what the parent responsibilities are. I've kind of made blanket statements like through this meeting and through our parent Zoom meeting last week. It's also on our website. There are expectations for parents. It's okay for parents to be, you know, really supportive, and probably they're going to have to start the year off really being on top of things until they kind of get into a groove and understand, okay, what this school year can look like learning from home. And I'll give recommendations. I'll provide sample schedules. I'll provide examples of what a successful learning environment at home can look like. I'm going to do everything I can do so parents feel supported and so our students can be successful.
Thank you. All right, any other questions?
I have a quick question.
Okay.
How, they're housed at CE, the elementaries and middle school for the 7-8. How are they assigned a teacher to get their synchronous learning? And
That's a really great question. So we are working on that. What it looks like, as you can imagine, through K through 6 looks different than 7 and 8. So and I've also had questions, are teachers going to be rooming and Zooming? So are teachers going to have a class full of students in front of them and then students on Zoom behind them? At the elementary level, that's not our intention. Our intention is that we'll have a classroom teacher housed at Castaic Elementary with a classroom with a roster of students. The middle school might have some room in Zoom. Right now, Mr. Broneisen and I have, you know, he's really good at brainstorming and being creative. So he really has a good vision there at the middle school. That might be a possibility at the middle school level, especially since the requirements are different as far as daily live interaction and weekly synchronous learning. Did that help to answer your question?
Yeah, it helps to know that it's being worked on. And
oh yeah, our vision is as soon as we have kind of more knowledge of what the numbers are, we'll be able to form our classrooms and know who the teachers are. But the intention is not to, for K through 6, is not to have room and Zoom.
Yeah,
it's to have one teacher.
And we have teachers who are interested or are already sharing that they would help out with that.
Did you say, do we have teachers who? No, because this hasn't really been something we've shared with our teachers, because really everything with independent studies, as far as like the state, et cetera, it's all just come together. And this has been like the big week of solidifying the information. So it's not something that we've really shared with teachers formally.
So I think where we're at today, Mrs. Maxon, is our last count was, I think we had 35 students enrolled. Now, some of those are middle school that we back out. Probably tomorrow we'll have to make a decision to internally fly and offer to our existing teachers this opportunity. And it may start with one teacher. And if we have to add as we get more enrollments, we would. And if we don't have any takers, then we'd have to post to the outside. And we do have some long-term subs and folks that we could bring on board. So it's really been contingent on the registrations. And parents really needed all that information. Kim did a great job last week with a parent orientation to help explain and understand what it looks like, but they're just trying to get their head around it, I think. So that's kind of where we're at today.
Makes sense. Thanks.
Any other questions or clarification? So if so, just our website has a link to independent study with all of the presentation from last week, but I have more information to add. So we'll get that hopefully tomorrow added.
Right.
Thanks, Kim.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right. Since there are no other questions or comments from board members, we will now vote on the item. Ms. Maxon?
Aye.
Mr. Malcolm?
Aye.
Mr. Richard?
Aye.
Ms. Pearson?
Aye.
And an aye by myself. Motion passes. Item
Sorry,
number, it's okay. I'm going to miss our four-legged friends at board meetings. Item number 3, first reading to adopt revised Administrative Regulation 6158 independent study. Is there a motion to approve this item?
I'll move.
Motion by Mr. Richard,
I'll
I'll
second.
second by Ms. Pearson. Are there any questions or comments on this item? All right, seeing that there are none, we will now vote. Ms. Maxon,
Aye.
Mr. Malcolm,
Aye.
Mr. Richard,
Aye.
Ms. Pearson,
Aye.
and an aye by myself. Motion passes. That finishes the action item portion of our meeting. We will now move down to the discussion portion, and I will let Mr. Doyle begin that discussion.
So we've recently been receiving several emails from concerned parents and family members about the mask guidelines that are put into place. And I first want to say that I totally sympathize with those students and those parents 100%. As a vaccinated person, I really enjoyed the freedoms of not having to wear a mask when I went out in public in indoor facilities, and even more so on the East Coast. But, you know, our number one priority this school year, and it's something last year, you know, parents were beating down our door last year too, is to make sure that we offer in-person learning for all of our kids. And we were able to successfully do that last year with about 85% of our kids in the spring when we came back. And part of the reason is that we strictly followed the guidance that we received from the California Department of Public Health and LA County Department of Public Health. We followed all of those protocols. We actually opened our first cohort of kids back last September, so almost a year ago, and then transitioned through, even the most extreme time in December and January, you know, we were able to bring our cohorts back and our kids back on a modified schedule in February, and ultimately April, we took the lead in the Valley in bringing all our kids back. So, you know, we're super proud of that. But the mask mandate has always been in place throughout all of that. And we want to continue to follow all of the health experts. Personally, I would not want to be in a position to have to make a decision that would go against or contradict. Now we have 4 entities. We have the Center for Disease Control, CDC. We have the American Academy of Pediatrics, the California Department of Public Health, and LA County Department of Public Health, all requiring masks indoors for everyone. And so, you know, it's interesting. We got LACO, the LA County Office of Education, shared a memo from their attorney yesterday, and I'll just read an excerpt of that. It says, per the directive from the California Department of Public Health, school districts must require that all students and staff wear face coverings at all times when indoors, regardless of vaccination status. All K-12 districts in the state must comply with this mandatory requirement. Therefore, local boards of education and the superintendent do not have the discretion about whether or not to enforce the mask mandate for students and staff. The CDPH makes it clear that the district's discretion is limited to adopting enforcement protocols that ensure face coverings are properly worn at all times while indoors. And to be clear, the enforcement protocols must achieve the end result of students wearing a mask when indoors, or the district is required to exclude the student and offer an educational alternative, which for us is the independent study program we just talked about. So we do have the discretion, and even at the board and superintendent level, we don't tell our principals how to enforce policies. And throughout last spring, we didn't tell them how to enforce the mask policy either. But typically that looks like, you know, a verbal warning to the student that you must comply and wear the mask. The next thing may be an email or a phone call home to the parent. The third opportunity might be a meeting with a parent and the administrator. And at the end of the day, if the child cannot wear a mask and it doesn't qualify as an exemption that falls under the law, then we'd have to look at an alternative opportunity for them. So unfortunately, that's just the position we're at. As a district, we have an obligation to the community to protect the community from undue liability. It's been very clearly told to us by our insurance carriers that if you don't follow the medical guidance or the outlines from the health professionals, you put the district at potentially severe risk for litigation or liability. On top of it, as a governing board and elected officials and myself and our other administrators, If we knowingly do not follow or comply with the law that's out there, we put ourselves at personal liability, which could come back to you, your home, your property, and your assets. And I know none of us want that. As much as we sympathize and would love to have kids not wear masks in school, it's not our choice. And at this point, if it was given as a choice to the district, I would recommend to the board that we follow the guidance from our health professionals. And at this time, they're all advising us to have masks in schools. Yesterday, we had our initial ADCO to start the school, which is a meeting of all of our administrative folks. We discussed with the principals yesterday, meeting with their teachers in their upcoming staff meetings to discuss how to handle the mask process now that students will be allowed to take them off outside. And many of you know, my wife's a first grade teacher. Her and I talked about it. She's come up with a solution to get the quart Ziploc bags for all of her kids, put their name on it, have 2 bins. The kids put their mask in there, they put it in the bin, they go outside and play. When she opens the door, she goes outside, they take their mask out of the bin. We encourage parents to send multiple masks in the backpack with their children. And of course, we have a ton of disposable masks at the schools and at the district. And so those will be available. And lastly, I've talked about this before, but I want to point out throughout this pandemic, up until June, we had a weekly call with LA County Office of Education and all 80 superintendents and their cabinet members. And on that call included Dr. Farrar and/or Dr. Gilcheck from LA County Department of Public Health. That is now a bi-monthly opportunity, but it's an opportunity for all of us to ask questions, ask clarification. We do send them in advance, but you can also chime in and call in if you have a question that you didn't get answered, if there's time. But it's a chance to clarify, to ask questions, to provide recommendations. There are times they've asked us for some recommendations because they're not necessarily in schools. You've heard Dr. Farrar talk about, she's a former principal, high school principal, so she does have some familiarity with schools, but we do continue to advocate and give advice to them along the way. So I just wanted to make those few points and open it up for the board to discuss and answer any questions you may have.
Yeah, my personal opinion is I don't think kids should have to wear masks in school, but I also know that I have to follow the law. So as much as I wish we could somehow get around that, we really can't. And I don't think it's fair to be asked to take on that liability. And I think it would be irresponsible for us to put that liability on the school district and on ourselves personally. So, I mean, I know people don't want to hear this, and I know that they don't like this answer, but really this is above us. And, you know, we're like the last person on the totem pole. And, you know, I mean, like I said, when we were opening schools, my opinion was that we just follow what the guidelines that they, you know, give us. And if they're going to let us open schools, we open schools. But likewise, if they're telling us that to be open, we have to have masks on, then that's just how it is. I can't change that. And it would, you know, again, it would be irresponsible for us to, you know, take on that liability, regardless of what my personal opinion is. Now, I've personally reached out to legislators, and I think it's going to take a lot of voices, you know, if that's what people are wanting to create that change, you know. So anyway, that's my opinion.
And Ms. Burke, I'm gonna chime in. I agree with you 100%. I don't want to wear a mask. I go back to work tomorrow morning, and as a school counselor, I'm required to wear a mask. I don't want to do it, but I've got a choice to make: work, feed my family, pay my bills, or take off the mask and stay home and, you know, probably lose my job. And as a school board member, you know, I have sworn to uphold the laws that govern what we do as school board members. And when you look at everything that we're responsible to do, we we know that we are here to govern schools, but that doesn't give us the ability to ignore rules and make our own rules that supersede state rules, county regulations, policies, and so forth. We don't have that ability. And you are 100% correct that it would be irresponsible. And as I go back to what I said as a school counselor, I hold a PPS credential and a teaching credential. I could lose that. I could lose that if I ignored the law. And all of us could eventually be sued if any student or adult, staff member, teacher, or so forth, became sick and unfortunately gave their life because of this disease. And I would never put anybody in that position. I wouldn't want to put anybody in that position. And my personal beliefs don't allow me to change the rules, change the regulations, or especially ignore those laws, rules, and regulations. And I understand the frustration. I have the same frustration. And, I hate getting beat up because we have parents that feel the same way that we do, and they're venting on us, and I get that. And you can yell and scream and everything at me, and I'm cool with that. But I would love for all of them to understand that it's not within our scope, not within our power to make the rules that they want us to do.
Thank you, Mr. Malcolm. Would anyone else like to comment? Okay.
I understand that this whole thing even came about because of Newhall School District writing a resolution. And I'm super glad to hear that people are actually watching their school board meetings because, we have a tough time trying to get people to watch our meetings. So maybe it was the fact that it was on their school board and people heard about it or on their agenda and they decided to watch it. But I encourage you to read that resolution. I have read many things and seen comments from parents that make it clear to me that people do not understand what that resolution was. That resolution was to write legislators a letter to encourage them not to have to wear masks. It was not that their children were not going to wear masks. That was not the case. And I feel like if our community feels like they would like us to write a letter, I'm willing to do that because we all agree with this. I'm willing to write a letter. However, I will be the first one to tell you that I feel personally, and this is not even something that our board has addressed, is that if 100% of school boards across the state of California were to send in a letter asking them to reconsider, they're going to look at us and say, what do these educators know? I mean, we're talking about the CDC, we're talking about doctors and people that know about the disease. We don't know anything about it. And we are required to follow the laws. Although we as board members make decisions as far as what textbooks we're going to use and what teachers we're going to hire and, changes in money that we're going to be spending on our schools and in our community, we don't have any decision to do with this. And it's almost, excuse me, offensive to get letters that say our school board's doing nothing because we have been following the mandates to keep our kids safe all along. And we have been, as a board, writing letters individually to our state legislators, trying to set up meetings with them and explain to them how we feel about not just this, but about the lack of funding to special ed and about other things that we need to talk to them about. That is our role as board members, but at no point in time can we go above the law. And we have rules and regulations that we have to follow. So I do encourage everybody on this board, if you guys are okay with writing a letter, let's write a letter. I don't have any problem with that. I don't necessarily want to do a resolution because then it becomes a legal letter and we have to meet every single time we want to make a change to it. But I don't have a problem doing that. I've been doing that all along. Okay, I'm done. Sorry.
No, thank you, Ms. Pearson. Just as you started to speak, I was like, oh, we need to talk about writing a letter. And I'm so glad that you brought that up. So
Yeah.
yeah.
I don't have any problem with that at all. Matter of fact, I would like to kind of specify in a letter that, when it's safe, we encourage them to look at our community or the Santa Clarita Valley as an individual outside of LA and encourage them to look at our numbers and when it's safe to do it out here. I don't think now's the right time because the numbers are going up again, but I'm willing to write that letter and I'm willing, if we decide, and obviously we'd have to vote on this at the next meeting because we can't make decisions. This is a discussion topic. Then I would encourage us to put it on the next agenda and talk about writing a letter.
And I want to add on there, I think that's a great idea. And I think we should include the letters we receive from our parents and send that as a package.
Especially the children.
Yeah, exactly. Those children have a great voice and they're the ones living it. They should have a voice.
Mr. Doyle, I feel like we could draft a letter before the next meeting and then vote on it at the next meeting, right? We don't have to have a discussion and write it at the next meeting and then vote on it again in September. I feel like we could draft a letter.
Yeah, and then we could put it on the agenda
to approve the letter, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
We just can't send it out until we've approved.
No, we cannot. No, we cannot until we've all agreed to that. I had a couple comments or just sort of things regarding the letter I wanted to talk about, but we could talk about that at the end after Ms. Maxon and Mr. Richards speak, if you'd like to. Wait.
I'm in agreement with what the three of you have already shared. My thoughts are exactly the same.
Okay. Thank you, Ms. Maxon.
Perfect. Well, thank you everyone for I loved all your input. It was great. It was great. And Laura, to be fair, I think a lot of this has been stirred up based upon what the Newhall School Board has done the last meeting. And it was interesting, Steve, I did not realize until, I know I'm going to talk about this or what was said tonight, but I didn't know Saugus was going to do something as well. I don't know, they were in conversation about so if that was, I don't know if that's true or not, but.
That was information.
Yeah, I'm not familiar with that Saugus is. I think the parent maybe misunderstood and named the wrong district, but I'm not sure.
Okay, I was just like, oh, okay. But so I was just thinking, I agree. Listen, I would rather not have masks. And my kids say, Dad, we have to wear masks. I go, well, this is what we're at. Say, please, Dad. Aren't you on the school board? Can't you do anything? I'm like, oh, thanks, guys, for putting pressure on me. But it's kind of funny that, they do that. But they, because they just want to go, they love school. They love school. They love all about it. And, but the mask thing I know has always been something like, Dad, they would love not to have to do it. So with that, what the Newhall law, you mentioned this about what the resolution is. From my conversations, from my understanding, is that the Newhall School Board isn't their battle isn't for mask or not mask. I think it deals more with the exemptions, what is under that they can have go through. In other words, an exemption if a child has this or a child has this. Is that fair, Steve? It deals more with the exemptions of it and what is permissible and allowed under the law of why some wouldn't have to wear masks.
Well, my understanding is they are having a meeting tonight to look to revisit their protocols for those exemptions. And I know Mrs. Burke had asked me, there are actually 4 exemptions that California Department of Public Health and LA County Department of Public Health have published. So the first is persons younger than 2 years of age. So we know that. Persons with a medical condition, mental health condition, or disability that prevents them from wearing a mask. This includes a person with medical condition for whom wearing a mask would obstruct breathing and who are unconscious, incapacitated, or otherwise unable to remove their mask. A person who is hearing impaired or communicating with a person who's hearing impaired, where the ability to see the mouth is essential. And lastly, a person for whom wearing a mask would create a risk to the person related to their work as determined by local, state, federal, or OSHA guidelines. So those are pretty clear. We already have a process in our district, either through an IEP or what's called a 504 plan. We have several students that have health conditions, and this would be the same situation. And I know Laura knows, as a nurse, oftentimes you consult with the nurse, we sit down and we draft a plan, a 504 plan for that child's medical needs, and we see how we can accommodate them. And the same is with this, with the caveat that both the state and the county are recommending, if you cannot wear a mask, then the alternative is to wear a face shield that has a drape that gets tucked into your shirt. And so we're in the process of purchasing those in case we do have any exemptions, and we would work on those on an individualized basis, but it would require documentation from a medical provider in order to do that. So it doesn't totally give free will to not wear a mask in school. There are still restrictions to it. And ultimately, Dr. Farrar said this morning, the end goal is to protect all students. So we can't just arbitrarily having people filing exemptions and then not following that guidance.
And so just want to make sure I understand correctly, even if they file an exemption and it's accepted, they're still wearing a face shield with a cloth that's attached to it and tucked into their shirt. So they're not completely without anything on their face. There's something on their face regardless.
Correct. And LA County's additional strong recommendation in their wording is that anyone who does not wear a mask is required to test twice a week. They need to be tested for COVID twice a week. And so that presents another challenge there.
Okay, no, but thanks for clarifying on that, because I wanted to make sure that I understood everything with the Newhall School District accurately. And I know they're having their board meeting tonight, so I hopefully I can, if time permitting, I can listen, or I can at least get the transcript of everything to hear about their discussion. So I was wondering then, if in light of all that, we just make it known, that there are exemptions and what it looks like if somebody is exempt, just to make sure we're clear in that, everybody in the community is clear. Secondly, as Laura proposed, I'm in big time support of writing a letter. If we call it a resolution, if you want to go that, formal, I'm all for that as well. I know, Laura, you said it takes some extra time if you want to change it because you have to have a board meeting, but I'm good to go with that for sure. And the third thing I was wondering is, I don't want to break up education during the day any more than it already is, but is there a way that we could have the students go outside more frequently? Do classes outside in any way? Because I know they don't have to wear masks outside, right? And so that would, that would at least alleviate the amount of time they have the mask on inside during learning. And I know it's hard to get everybody outside, particularly in August and September. It's cooking, it's really hot. And but I don't know if you have to propose that, but that I would love to really push that if we could.
No, I think our teachers have that freedom and flexibility. When it's not lunchtime, you have the commons area where they eat that's covered, weather permitting, of course. I know our teachers were very accommodating. If students had issues with the mask, they would give them a mask break and let them go outside and take it off and catch their breath. So just ask. I know people are very understanding about that.
Okay, but I mean, obviously, I just know I would love to have no mask, for sure. I mean, wholeheartedly. And it is unfortunate that we're in a bind. Because we're limited. I want to obey the law, right? So I'm torn, right? It's not like I want to, be openly defiant in any way. It's like, oh, so what do we do, right? It's that's what I was thinking is write the letter, make sure we emphasize the exemptions, and do, like I said, just do as many opportunities we can to have them without masks. Because Steve, they don't have to have masks on outside, right? I know.
Right, and that was the number one complaint we got last spring was, especially as it got hotter, when students having to wear those masks outside at recess. Now, they're still required to maintain social distancing just to keep the distance, but they can take their masks off. And I want to stand corrected. I had a parent email me during this meeting about, I made a comment about the Ziploc bags. And
Okay.
as a medical professional, they don't encourage anything that germs can habitate in plastic bags. Their recommendation was to use paper bags because they can breathe through them. So I just want to clarify that, and I appreciate that feedback. And again, it goes to show that's not our area of expertise. I don't know where to store a mask, but so I appreciate that feedback.
So, yeah. So this whole thing is so interesting because even on a grander scale too, with the whole mask thing, I know like one sheriff said he's not going to enforce it, and it's kind of like it's so interesting. I mean, it just that's all. It's just a fascinating topic, and but if there's any way that we could have no mask, I'm for any. I'm for as quickly and as often as we could do it. I'll say that, and I would fight and do whatever I could for that. But I know in the meantime, so how do we draft the letter then? How do we go ahead and do that? Just we pick somebody and they just go for it?
Yeah, so I was just gonna say, are we ready to talk about that? So we're all in agreement that we're gonna write a letter, not a resolution. My thoughts on it are not to ask for local control from each district, but to ask for a lifting of the mandate, if that makes sense. Like I don't want to get to I don't want to get to this again where it's like, okay, let each district decide, but we're still not taking away the liability, but you can decide to do what you want. Like that doesn't seem like a good idea, right? So, I mean, for me, what I want to see is just a lifting of the mandate, but I don't know what you guys are comfortable, what you're looking for as far as the letter.
I'm okay with that.
Okay.
Honestly, because I don't think it's going to happen. The mandate's not going to be lifted until it's safe. So maybe that instead of the local control, I guess our disadvantage is we are in Castaic, right? So when they look at the numbers for our area, they're always adding in the jail.
Yeah.
So that kind of throws us off anyways. And I agree that when it's safe, that the mask should not be necessary. But I also agree that we shouldn't be making that decision. You know, they should definitely be doing it as to when it's safe.
Laura, who do you mean by they? Are we talking about parents or are we talking about medical professionals?
No, I'm talking about the CDC and everybody that's making the laws and handing down the legislative laws saying, sorry, I'm hoarse all of a sudden, that we have to wear the mask, that it's not an option.
Okay. So, Mr. Doyle, is it like up to 2 board members can get together with you to draft this letter?
Mm-hmm. That's how it works.
All right.
Volunteers?
I'd be willing to do it, but I also don't want to hog everything. So, I don't want someone to be upset because they didn't get to do it. So, what are people's thoughts? Or is there anyone that wants to join in writing that?
I'm okay to do it if you want me to help. I'm kind of limited with, I actually might be leaving on Monday to go to New Mexico for 4 weeks.
Okay, so maybe that's.
But we can do it via text or Zoom or whatever. We can do that.
And I'd be willing to help as well.
Okay.
Jeannie, did you want to help? Is that what you said?
I'm good with, do we get to see some of the drafts before the board meeting? I don't know.
Absolutely.
What would be allowed, Mr. Doyle?
Well, I can send you the drafts, and then it's not a conflict.
Okay, good.
All right. I mean, we get to see an agenda before we vote on it usually anyway. So.
Right.
All right.
Well, and this would be the recommendation is that if Mr. Doyle is sending out drafts and you have something that you don't agree with or that you want added, respond to him only. So it's not a Brown Act violation.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
That sounds good. Mr. Richard, do you want to join in and we'll do it?
Sure,
Okay.
that'd be great. Yep.
All right.
Can we reach out to our parents and students, staff, the faculty, everybody, and try to make this a package?
I thought it was going to be a letter from the board.
Right, a letter from the board, but I'm saying when it does go forward, who are we going to send this to?
Okay, so are you asking that we're going to send this letter are you saying you also want to encourage parents to write letters for us to include in the packet? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think
Most of the letters are going to
Governor, CDPH,
CDC.
right? The ones.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And Fred, it's interesting because I know there is a Facebook site in our Castaic, Mass Choice for our Castaic kids, and I will say there's 107 people in that group, and so you then think, oh, if they have one student or even two groups, if they had two students per group, that is almost 11.6% of our ADA in Castaic. So there, it's 10%, right? I know it's not 50%, but I'm just saying that I'm sure there's a lot of people that be willing to help, at least want to give letters of support in that. That's why I was bringing that up. And, and that's a big portion in my mind of our community.
And to me, I think it's more powerful when it's coming from the community and not just the board itself.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And
I do agree.
Yeah, I agree.
Or for our frustrated parents.
Well, and I think the biggest thing is that our community and those 11% of the parents need to understand that we don't make this decision. We heard that in every letter, how frustrated the parents are at us. You know what? We're frustrated too about the mandates and what they're doing, but we don't make those decisions. We don't make the laws. We carry out the rules and decide where to spend money in the district. There are certain things that we can't do, and this is not on that list of things that we can do. So that's the biggest thing. I heard that a lot, even on comments about the Newhall School District's meeting. There were 90% of the people that commented on that Facebook page said that they wouldn't send their kids back to school if they had to wear masks. So there was a lot more people that were for the mask than not for the mask. But the biggest problem with everything about Newhall so far is that people don't understand what they did. I think that we're hearing from it because people think Newhall has decided that their kids are not wearing masks. And then when we have people that say, I'm going to pull my kids from the district, that's a shame, but where are you going to take them? Every other district out here has to wear masks too. It's not our decision right now, So that's what I think needs to get out there, be it in the media or on Facebook pages or whatever, is that we agree with you. We are frustrated just as you are, but we don't make the rules. And we have been writing letters and sending letters. I think everybody on this board can say that we have already done this. We've shared our frustration. Now, have we done it as a group? No. So I'm willing to do that. But until the situation changes, I don't see them changing the rules.
Yeah. Yeah, it is important for people to know that when we advocate for the kids in our district and we advocate for our district, that comes in many forms. A resolution is just one of them. And sometimes a lot of what we do just isn't seen and it's not on public display, but it is happening. So,
yeah. And with that being said, sorry.
I was going to say prior to the pandemic, we used to go up to Sacramento and advocate with all of our legislators. And hopefully that's in the future, we'll be able to do that again.
Mm-hmm.
On bus trips and stuff. And
I've attended the SEV trustees meetings. We've had Mike Garcia there and, some other legislators that have come on, and I've had the opportunity to ask them questions and to, advocate for our district. So I know it is happening. It's just, we're not, it's just, we don't send out a press release every time we do it. So
it is, and I have no idea if we can do this or not. I'm just one of five on a school board, right? And but is there any way we can somehow try to get a town hall with one of our state representatives, one of our state senator, or even with Mike Garcia, on the federal level? I mean, I don't have any say, but I'm willing to try and keep calling and trying to get hold of their office. Say, hey, is there a way we can have that? And then invite parents out to talk with them. I'm just because now we're at, not that you guys aren't advocating already, you guys fully are, but I was just saying we're even putting and doing everything we're trying to do to advocate for this. And, you know, and if it still gets shut down, then it gets shut down. But I know that I have a clear, you know, my conscience is even clearer about trying to do as much as I possibly could do.
I'm open to that. I know Mrs. Burke has been advocating for at least 2 or 3 months to get a meeting to talk about special education funding, and we have not been able to get that meeting scheduled yet.
Yeah.
Well,
So
public
Steve,
meetings right now are really hard to do, but I mean, it
I
doesn't.
assumed this summer's not a good time, so I'm being.
Right.
Would
But, yeah.
it be better, Steve, if all of us as a board sent each one, like as a group, sent them a letter as opposed to individually to try to give a little more oomph to it? Or
Are you guys talking about regarding the mask issue?
no, I'm sorry, talking about having a town hall or a meeting with our state rep or our state senator, you know, or our house, you know, our representing the house, you know, in the federal level.
Well, I think what may be really powerful is if the SCV Ed or the Trustees Association advocated for that and had it on Zoom where parents could call in. Then it would be all of the school boards, because I know all of the districts are feeling frustration along the way.
That's a good idea, Mr. Doyle.
Okay, then how can we? Yeah, I don't know. I mean, Marion, you're more a representative, you know, for our school district and the SCV trustees. But whatever I can do to help with that, I'd love to do.
I'll talk to the president.
Okay.
How do we go about letting our families know what we have done? I mean, do we start up a quarterly newsletter? Do we do a parent square thing saying, hey, just want to let you know we did blah, 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 or we're getting ready to do blah, 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 blah. If you have any input you could send us, I mean, I'd like our families to know what we're doing.
Yeah, that's a good idea. And maybe we do need to draft a letter just to our parents, summarizing maybe a little bit of what we've talked about here and what we've done and what our plan is, just so that they're aware. So
I would really like to see parents write letters too, but I don't want them to be pre-drafted letters. I want everybody to write from their heart. Yeah.
Yeah, fair enough.
And I think we saw that in some of the letters that came to us. It was kind of the same stuff over and over again.
Yeah.
Write it from your heart. If your kids are really having a tough time, tell them why. Or why you don't think it's a good idea. You know, the drafted letters, I wouldn't want to draft out a letter and say, sign your name to this and send it to Mike Garcia and Scott Wilk and people in our area. Instead, contact them, send them a letter and let them know how you feel. I know that we had discussed, or Mr. Malcolm and I kind of threw out some ideas today, so I'll share with you guys that I would like to start doing a piece after 14 years of being on the school board. I'd like to start doing a piece about what a school board does and what our limits are and what we can do and what we can't do. This is my thing. Like, originally the thought was, let's ask Mr. Doyle to do 5 minutes in every board meeting that kind of gives you a draft of something, right? My issue with that is that, you know, we have 21 people watching this meeting right now. And so that's only going to touch 21 people. So maybe we do something and have Mr. Osano's CMS TV tape Mr. Doyle going over some rules and regulations and what we can do and what we can't do, highlighting board members and what they do, what we have done, how many years we've been on the board, just regulations, so they know what it's like to be a school board member. You know, whether it's on CMS TV or we do it on Parent Square or we put something on our website so we can just kind of get people to know what we can do. I hear people's frustrations, and if they think that we have the authority to do this, yes, they're pissed that we're not doing it, but we can't do it. And so they need to know that. They need to know what our regulations are, who we have to listen to. You know, every time we have a special ed child or somebody that comes with special recommendations and it costs our district $50,000 to send them outside of the district, if people didn't know that we are required to do that by law, that extra $50,000 really kind of rubs you wrong. But you know that we have to do that, and that's what's best for that child. So I think that falls under this is what we have to do, and that's why we have to do it.
Yeah, Ms. Pearson, one of the little comments that I got back to me was, you know, after we were talking about that was, with the letters written by the parents, you guys never comment on them. You never comment on the letters that we write you. We can't. And that's where, you know, this whole thing generated from in my mind was like, well, parents, not all parents know that we can't comment on those letters. We're not allowed to, you know, by the Brown Act and so forth. So I think it's a wonderful idea that we reach out to our community and let them know, and start, I don't mean this in a bad way, but teaching them what your school board does, what it can do, and what it cannot do. I think that's as equally as important.
And
Right.
that's so
think
true.
Well, this issue's come up before, and Maureen, I thought you had a presentation that we talked about.
I got the slideshow or the PowerPoint from someone. So we can go over that and, you know.
Maybe figure out if we could film it like Laura suggested, and then have a link to it, or send it out via Parent Square, or however we can do it.
Yeah, that's a great
I'd
idea.
like to get it out to more people. Like, you know, when I told Mr. Malcolm this, is that when I was first elected to the board, I went to CSBA convention and I went to a meeting. It was a tabletop meeting about how to get more people to come to our meetings. And I was told, watch what you're wishing for, because people come to your meetings when they're mad. They never come just because they want to listen to what's happening. So with that being said, if we're trying to educate our parents and inform them on what it is that we do, and we're only doing something at a meeting, we're going to touch a small majority of people as long as everything's going well. If we did it at a point in time where something's happening or we're in financial hardship, we could touch 300 people, but we really don't want that to happen in order to educate our parents.
Yeah. All right. So I think it's agreed. We're going to do that and we'll follow through.
Yeah.
So.
No, I think it's really good. I just want to confirm that's really good. And I would say this, you know, there's two things tonight in this whole process, even this whole year. I'm convicted that I need to do as much as I can do, even more than, you know, that I'm doing. Just to do whatever I can in any way to reach out to whoever I need to do for anything. Whether time is limited or not, that's regardless. On the flip side, I want to affirm, I know you guys work hard and you're not trying to hide behind anything to try to justify inactivity in any way. So I'm just saying that publicly because I know that's not what you're trying to do. I know you want to do it. I know you want to do whatever you can do.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Richard. Okay. Are there any other comments? All right. Seeing that there are none, we will, we can now adjourn the meeting. Can I get a motion to adjourn the meeting?
I'll move.
Motion, Ms. Pearson, second by Mr. Malcolm. We'll now vote. Ms. Maxon?
Aye.
Mr. Malcolm?
Aye.
Mr. Richard?
Aye.
Ms. Pearson?
Aye.
And an aye by myself. Motion passes. The meeting is adjourned at 6:21.